but we're starting today with The Mandalorian, Disney's new Star Wars IP. Jon Favreau show running this story that's going to take place on the planet of Mandalore. And Bubba Fett and Jango Fett famously wore the Mandalorian armor. They were not Mandalorians, but there's been one picture released last week, and it looks pretty sick. I mean, it got me pretty hype. What was your initial response to seeing this first picture and finding out the name of this show?
Yeah, no, it looks like they're spending $10 million an episode on the show, as we found out, which
Yep.
is great. I think any uh, caution people would have with a live action Star Wars show, and part of the reason George Lucas never really made the shows that he wrote countless scripts for was due to cost, and Disney. This is going to be the flagship, I assume, adult themed title for year, and they're wisely not going to spare any expense. That's the same amount of cost per episode, for example. So that's great, and that first image looks really dynamite, looks messy. Uh, um, I think shows like Arrow and all those CW superhero shows, and even maybe the Marvel Netflix shows to a lesser extent, they always felt like they could have given you more if more was invested in them, right? So I'm just hoping that the Mandalorian continues to run, smoothly the way we have, literally go off so far, and all these different directors, exciting names
Mm-hmm.
being thrown out. Taika Waititi staying in the Disney family. Dave Filoni, Star Wars Lucasfilm veteran. Rick Famuyiwa, Deborah Chow.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah, and that's might be the most interesting one, right? I know Bryce Dallas Howard's done some writing, but I don't know how much directorial experience she has. So that's a cool pick. Obviously maybe satiating Ryan Howard for
Solo
taking a
revival.
lot of heat for Solo. So very exciting all around. So I'm eager to see maybe a teaser early next year or something.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and we've been talking a lot about, especially during awards times, how Game of Thrones kind of winding down. Last season, there's going to be these spin-offs, but it's going to leave a huge void in terms of what people are watching. And I mean, it's not that if you watch Game of Thrones, it's all you watch, but it takes a lot to follow a show like that. There's a lot of mythology behind it. If you can get really lost to theories. Shows are an hour plus long, so it's an investment. And within the next couple of years, there's a lot of big IP out there, a lot of fantasy IP out there that's going to be coming. Star Wars is the one that we're talking about now, as I mentioned, the Game of Thrones spinoffs, which I think we'll probably see, probably as Thrones is wrapping up next year. Some of the trailers come out for that. Chronicles of Narnia is coming to Netflix. They bought all the C.S. Lewis property there. We got the King Killer Chronicles, which Lin-Manuel Miranda is running for Showtime. Lord of the Rings coming to Amazon, we talked about, and that's supposed to be Game of Thrones level budget. So we'll see if that equals quality. Dark Materials on BBC. It's the James McAvoy property, which they said that they might only make one season, but there's I think like 13 books in that series or something like that. There's a lot. And then the Wheel of Time also coming to Amazon. So there's a lot of different IP coming up. What do you make of
Wheel of
this?
Time's the one with the books. His Dark
Oh,
Materials all
sorry,
three. That's the Golden Compass trilogy.
sorry,
Um,
I had it the other way around.
yeah, yeah. Um, I think it's fascinating that everyone, all the various networks, and I think BBC will be uniting with HBO to show his Dark Materials over here in the US. So basically, everyone has skin in the game, and someone like Amazon, like you said, Wheel of Time, a series with like 13, 15 books, various timelines. I mean, that's the series that was not finished by its original author. Robert Jordan passed away, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the common example for George R. R. Martin to get his act together, right? And the fact that they're going to do that, something that's never really been adapted, while also doing Lord of the Rings as their big bet. It's crazy to see everyone just kind of commodifying the fantasy genre and hoping to find that next Game of Thrones or even that next Walking Dead, just to show that really commands the screen time and endangers, or emboldens, we have that blueprint for how you make really good franchise TV in the prestige era. So the potential is there for all of these shows, given that almost all of them have a lot of good talent already attached. So we just kind of gotta let's see how it goes, because if they're all competing side by side, something inevitably will fall by success.
Mhm. Yeah, especially with these coming to streaming and kind of, I think a point a lot of people are making is these shows don't care if you're watching them all at the same time, if you're watching them week to week. They just want to have them in their library for people to discover. The thing about Game of Thrones, though, is similar to Breaking Bad or other shows that really capture the zeitgeist, is people are talking about them as they happen. You can't be on Twitter as Game of Thrones is airing and you're not watching it. So it's interesting, I think, how these shows are going to go about it, because for a show like Game of Thrones, it really just had it encapsulates it monopolizes that time. It's all people are talking about when it's happening. But these shows are going to be different, and I don't know if, especially coming to streaming platforms, all being released, if they'll all be released at once in small chunks, if any of these will ever be able to really reach that Game of Thrones level again. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think so. Almost all of these properties are. I mean, I wouldn't say they're super mainstream or have this super big ability to become really broad appeal on their own.
Mhm.
Almost all of these, they're old. These books have been around a while, right?
Mhm.
Best selling and whatnot. But the reason Game of Thrones, became so big and so lauded was not because it was a very dense fantasy world like all these other shows. It was because it was about well written, interesting characters, and, you know, relationships and things like that, right?
Mhm.
And if these other shows don't have that and they just have dense lore, if done well, it'll still attract fans of the property already,
Right.
but probably won't, you know, burst through the PTV bubble and get anybody else. And all
Mhm.
these, networks and services want everybody else as well.
Right.
So, honestly, really, it's going to come down to quality and exposure, but uh, we've seen what happens when something that's really good doesn't, really jump out beyond its core base. I mean, heck, the channel Sci-Fi does a lot of these weird bets all the time.
Mhm.
Usually, not don't invest as much as they should, but I mean, they never become gigantic hits, even when they're good. So, you know, we have quite the range of possibilities, and now we just got to see if all these shows do in fact get made, and then how good they actually are.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to watch, and we'll be talking about them. The more that these sort of properties come out, the more I just appreciate shows like The Good Place. Something that's like 30 minutes. It's short. It's kind of mindless in ways. Like you don't have to invest too much, especially
Mhm.
because like right now I'm catching up on Saul. I'm working my way through Maniac. I look forward to The Good Place almost more than any other show, or like Survivor, which is like an hour of like mindless television every Wednesday, just because uh, they take a lot out of you, and especially after we this isn't our full time job. We work for a living, so you only have
For now,
so much. Yeah, for now, sponsor the pod. We are sellouts if nothing else, but it's just nice to have that time where you don't need to be so invested. So we'll be talking about it as it comes up.